The alarm hit first. Red lights spun along the concrete walls of Stargate Command. The long, echoing corridors under Cheyenne Mountain filled with the sound of sirens and boot steps. Major Samantha Carter ran. Her boots slapped the floor as she took the last turn toward the control room. Through the glass, she saw the Stargate already spinning. Chevron lights flashed one by one. "The off-world team isn't due back for another 6 hours," Walter shouted over the noise. His hands flew over the keyboard. "I'm not dialing. Something's dialing us." Carter leaned over his shoulder. On the screen, the gate's power curve wasn't normal. There was a second wave, a sharp spike riding on top of the usual energy signature. It looked wrong. It looked new. "That's not a gold signal," she said. "It's something else. There's an extra frequency buried in the wormhole formation. Almost like..." The seventh chevron locked. The inner ring stopped. The kawoosh of unstable energy blasted out, then settled into a shining pool. "Close the iris," General Hammond ordered from behind her. "Right now, Major." Walter hit the control. The huge metal shield slid over the gate. The iris shimmered as the event horizon rippled against it. Carter stared at the readings. Her mind raced. "There's bleed-through," she said. "Sir, whatever is riding this connection is pushing extra energy into the system. I've never seen anything like it. If we keep the iris shut and the pressure builds..." The monitors flickered. For a heartbeat, the camera feeds cut out. Static crawled across every screen in the room. The strange extra frequency spiked so high it nearly went off the scale. In that flash of noise and light, a different room appeared on one of the monitors. Not the gate room, a high glass window, sleek metal. A man in red and gold armor standing in a circle of blue light. Then it was gone. "Rewind that," Hammond said. "We can't," Walter answered, fingers hammering the keys. "It wasn't recorded. It was bleeding in, like a signal on top of our own." Carter swallowed. "Sir, that looked like an active portal. If 2 wormholes connect..." The power bars leaped again. "Open the iris," she snapped. "If we don't, this thing might blow half the mountain apart." Hammond gave one sharp nod. "Do it." Walter hit the control again. The iris slid back. The event horizon swelled like someone had thrown a rock into water. The blue surface bulged out into the gate room. For a second, it looked as if it might burst free of the ring. Then shapes fell out of it. 1, 2, 3, more. They hit the ramp in a mess of armor, cloth, and limbs. A red and gold figure crashed down first, metal boots screaming on steel. A man in blue with a shield rolled to one knee, shield up in front of him. A huge green body slammed onto the metal and dented it. A tall figure with a cape and a hammer came last, landing in a crouch, eyes already glowing with strange light. Every weapon in the gate room turned on them. "Stand down," Jack O'Neill yelled from the base of the ramp. But the SF teams had already thumbed off their safeties. The green giant, the Hulk, growled. The sound vibrated in everyone's chest. He pushed himself to his feet, muscles swelling, fists curling. "Easy, big guy," the man in armor said through a metal faceplate. His voice came out filtered, calm. "We're not in New York anymore." Carter stared. She had seen a lot of aliens. Jaffa, Asgard, Tok'ra. But she had never seen a human-looking man with a suit that scanned like that. The armor pulsed with its own power source. No Nakada, no Goa'uld design. Something fully human and fully impossible. The man in blue got to his feet. His shield was round and bright, a circle of red and white with a star in the middle. He placed himself between his team and the row of guns. "My name is Steve Rogers," he called out. His voice was clear even over the alarm. We're not here to hurt anyone." Jack didn't lower his pistol. "That's nice," he said. "But you dropped out of our top-secret alien ring from God knows where, so you'll forgive me if I'm a little tense." The tall blonde man with the hammer straightened. His cape settled behind him like a flag. "This realm." He looked up at the concrete ceiling, as if he could see through it. "This is Midgard, Earth, and yet not the Earth I know." He turned to Carter's window. His eyes glowed brighter for a moment as he felt the strange energy around the gate. "You have cracked the shell between worlds," he said. "Impressive." Carter's brain tried to line up the pieces. Portal bleed-through, unknown armor, superhuman physiology. The word formed at the edge of her thoughts, taken from whispers and news reports from a different world that had never been hers. Avengers. "Whoever you are," Hammond's voice came over the speaker, calm but iron hard. "You're in a United States military facility. Lower your weapons. Stay where you are." The armored man's faceplate peeled back, revealing a tired but sharp face with dark eyes. He glanced up at the control room. "Tony Stark," he said. "Long story. Multiverse accident. Big hole in reality. That ring of yours is part of it." He shrugged. "Also, I think we just crashed your party." Far beyond the mountain, beyond the sky of this Earth, something watched. On the edge of normal space, where light itself seemed to slow, a shape like a black cloak in a storm shifted. It was not a ship, not really. It was a presence wrapped around a shell. Anubis felt the flicker. Not a gate opening, he thought. A tear, new energy, new minds, new weapons. "Interesting," he whispered to no one. His voice was like dry wind over stone. "There are new gods in my galaxy." Hours later, Steve Rogers sat at a long metal table and tried not to stare at the walls. It wasn't the room. The room was just a room, plain, solid, the kind of place he had sat in many times since waking up in this century. It was the mountain above him, the thing they had called the Stargate under his feet, the idea that he was on Earth and not Earth at the same time. He folded his hands on the table, the shield leaning against his chair. The others were spread around. Tony at the far end, no helmet now, nursing a small bruise on his forehead and tapping his fingers. Natasha close to the wall, where she could see every door. Clint beside her, arms crossed. Bruce hunched in his chair, trying to look small. Thor stood. Chairs weren't built for him. Across from them sat General Hammond, his uniform neat, his face calm. To his left, Major Carter, eyes bright. Beside her, a man with glasses and a long-suffering look. Dr. Daniel Jackson, they'd said. At the end of the table on that side, Colonel Jack O'Neill slouched in his chair like he was allergic to meetings. "And that," Tony finished, "is why you never mix an untested multiverse scanner with a power source that once opened a hole over Manhattan." Hammond blinked once. "You used an alien power source to open a hole in reality," he said. It wasn't a question. Tony gave a small, sharp smile. "We prefer cosmic artifact, but yes, we were scanning for energy spikes outside our universe. Something pinged. It looked like trouble. We thought, hey, if we can see it, we can study it." "And you didn't think this was a bad idea?" O'Neill asked. "We saved our world from an alien army and a killer robot," Tony shot back. "Bad ideas are kind of our brand." Steve cleared his throat. "The important part," he said, "is that the experiment went wrong. We fell through. We're not here by choice." He looked Hammond in the eye. "But we are still here, and we don't abandon people who need help." Daniel leaned forward. "You said alien army and killer robot very calmly. Steve had the sudden memory of New York under the Chitauri, Sokovia floating in the sky. He kept his face neutral. "We've seen a lot," he said. "I'm guessing you have too." Daniel nodded slowly. "You could say that." Carter turned a pad of paper around and clicked a pen. She began sketching as she spoke. "The Stargate is a ring made of naquadah," she said. "It creates a stable wormhole between 2 points in space. Instant travel between planets in this galaxy and beyond. The addresses are set by these symbols." She drew the familiar chevrons and glyphs, then added a wave over them. "What we saw when you arrived," she went on, "was a second pattern laid on top of the first. Another wormhole from another universe folding into ours." Bruce's eyes lit up in spite of his tension. "You're saying your gate caught our bridge?" "Exactly," Carter said. "Like two waves crashing into each other and making a bigger wave. We've never seen that before." Tony looked interested now, even past his worry. "Naquadah," he repeated. "That the metal we picked up in the scan. Exotic, dense, reacts to energy like it's flirting with it." Carter smiled despite herself. "That's one way to put it." Thor's gaze moved between them. The talk of strange metals and gates didn't move him as much as one word had. "Gods," he said. "You said you fight false gods." All eyes turned to teal'c, the silent Jaffa, who had stood at the wall like a statue this whole time. He stepped forward. "The Goa'uld," he said, "are parasites. They take human hosts. They use advanced technology to pretend to be gods. They ruled my people for thousands of years." He met Thor's eyes without fear. "They are not gods," teal'c went on. "They are cowards who demand worship." Steve watched Thor's jaw tighten. The Asgardian's grip on Mjolnir shifted. "On my world," Thor said slowly, "the Asgard have been mistaken for gods as well. We are not. We are warriors and guardians. I will not suffer parasites who steal that name." Steve saw that spark and felt something familiar. Anger at bullies. Anger at men who stood on the necks of others. He leaned in. "So there are planets out there," he said to Hammond, "where these Goa'uld still rule, where people are still slaves." Hammond's face didn't change. His voice stayed level. "Yes," he said. "We free who we can. We fight where we can. But we are one world. Out there is a whole galaxy. And there are enemies worse than the Goa'uld." "Worse," Clint muttered. Daniel nodded. "Half-ascended beings. Machines that eat technology. Another galaxy where people worship beings who can burn whole planets with a thought. It's complicated." The room fell quiet for a beat. Then the door opened, and a man in a black coat stepped in, eye patch glinting under the fluorescent lights. Nick Fury surveyed the room, took in the gate symbol on the wall, the military uniforms, his team, and did not look surprised. "So," he said, "Earth has a secret space program, a magic ring, and a file big enough to choke a horse, and I didn't get an invite." "Director Fury," Hammond said, "I understand you're their commanding officer." Fury's one eye narrowed. "Let's call it partner in poor life choices," he said. "General, doctor, colonel, nice cave." Natasha's mouth twitched. Carter slid a thin stack of paper towards Steve. "There's something else," she said. "We have to debrief every mission. Standard procedure. You'll need to write reports on how you got here and what happened during your last major engagements." Tony stared at the stack like it was a snake. "Paperwork," he said, "in a secret base under a mountain, in another universe." "Welcome to the team," Jack said dryly. Steve took the forms without complaint. He had been doing after-action reports since the 40s. He didn't love them, but they meant order. They meant someone was trying to make sense of chaos. We'll fill them out, he promised. But first, we need to agree on something. Hammond lifted an eyebrow. Which is? Steve spread his hands. We're not prisoners, he said. We're soldiers, heroes. At least we try to be. You have people to protect. So do we. Let us help. O'Neill looked at Hammond. Hammond looked at Fury. For a few seconds, all the stubborn men in the room weighed pride, fear, and the shape of the war ahead. Finally, Hammond nodded once. You're not prisoners, he said, but you are guests in a highly classified program. Until we know more about what your presence means, you don't go anywhere without an escort. You don't talk to the outside world, and you follow our rules when you're under my mountain. And in return, Fury asked. In return, Hammond said, we invite you on one of our missions. You'll see what we face out there, and we'll see what you can really do. Out among the stars, a Hartak glided through hyperspace. On the throne sat Baal, fingers steepled under his chin. He watched the data scroll across the screen in front of him. His eyes gleamed with amusement. Strange, he murmured. The Tauri gate gave off a burst unlike any I have ever seen. His first prime shifted uneasily. Could it be a new weapon, my lord? Baal smiled. Everything is a weapon in the right hands. He leaned back. Prepare a ship for near-Earth observation, he said. If the Tauri have found new friends, I would like to introduce myself. The first off-world mission came faster than anyone liked. Steve stood in the SGC locker room, strapping on his shield harness. The air smelled of metal and detergent. Rows of grey lockers stretched in both directions. Beside him, SG-1 moved with practiced ease. Jack checked his vest, counting grenades and spare magazines. Carter loaded her P90 and slipped a small device into her pocket. Daniel tried to decide which notebook to bring. teal'c lifted his staff weapon in one arm like it weighed nothing. Tony was the only one not wearing standard issue gear. The upper half of his armor was open, showing the arc reactor glowing in his chest. Question, Tony said as he pulled on a gauntlet. Do all your missions start with, please don't die in the first 5 minutes, or is that just the vibe in this room? Pretty much standard, Jack said. If you want a warm-up, we have a nice planet where the local birds spit acid. I'll pass, Tony said, helmet folding closed with a click. Thor walked in, hammer already in hand. I'm told we go to a world once ruled by false gods, he said. I would see these ruins. Bruce hovered near the doorway, clearly uncomfortable, but trying. He wore a loose outfit, no armor. There wasn't much that fit the other guy. Hammond's voice came over the speaker. SG-1, Avengers, he said. You are go for mission P3X457. Primary objectives: survey, update rebel contacts, and assess any Goa'uld activity. Secondary objective: demonstrate that we can all play nice off-world. Steve smiled a little at that last line. In the gate room, the Stargate roared to life. The kawoosh filled the ramp area with blue light. Steve took point without thinking. It felt right. He walked up the ramp, the shield on his back, his team behind him, SG-1 fanning out. As his foot hit the event horizon, he felt the cold push over his skin, like stepping through ice water. Then he was somewhere else. The sky above P3X457 was pale and wide. The sun sat low, turning the broken stones around the gate into long shadows. In the distance, Steve saw the outline of pyramids, but not like the ones in Egypt. These were half-ruined metal things, with scorch marks on the sides and dark openings where engines or guns might have once sat. "Welcome to the ruins of a former System Lord's summer home," Jack said beside him. "He's dead. The locals are free. We come by sometimes to make sure it stays that way." Daniel pointed toward a cluster of houses built from stone and scrap metal. Smoke curled up from a few fires. People moved slowly between buildings, casting nervous looks at the gate. Steve's chest tightened. He had seen that look in towns in Europe once, when planes had flown overhead every day. "We should talk to them," he said. "We will," Daniel said, gently. They were halfway down the steps when the sky changed. A light flared high above like a star appearing where there hadn't been one. Steve squinted. The shape grew, lines spreading around it. Thor lifted Mjolnir. "That is no star," he said. "That is a ship." Carter's eyes were on her detector. "Hyperdrive signature," she snapped. "Hartak class. Big." A triangle of bright light stabbed down from the growing dot in the sky. Steve's instinct screamed. "Cover!" he shouted. The beam hit the ground far past the village, throwing up a column of dirt and rock. The shockwave washed over them a second later, a hot, hard slap of air. "Jaffa," teal'c said. Figures were already appearing around them. Rings of light slammed into the dirt, leaving behind armored warriors with staff weapons raised. More came through, encircling the gate. Jack cursed. So much for a quiet meet and greet. Staff blasts snapped through the air, bright and deadly. SG-1 dropped behind cover, returning fire. Villagers screamed and ran for shelter. Steve raised his shield and charged. The first blast hit the vibranium and bounced off, spraying harmless light into the air. Steve slammed into the nearest Jaffa, shield first, sending him flying. He twisted, letting two more shots glance off the shield, then swept it in a wide arc that knocked 3 staff weapons aside. This isn't a training exercise, he thought. These people will die if we don't end this fast. "Hulk," Tony's voice came over the team channel. "Smash the guys with the gold hats." Bruce hesitated. Then a staff blast hit the ground near him, throwing him down the steps. He rolled, came up with a snarl, and the change tore through him. Bones stretched, skin turned green, clothes ripped. In seconds, the Hulk roared on the dusty ground. He hit the nearest group of Jaffa like a truck. Staff weapons snapped in his hands. He swung a body into another body, the impact shaking the stones. Thor took to the air, cape snapping. Lightning coiled around his hammer. "You dare bring your false gods to this field," he shouted. He threw Mjolnir. It ripped through a ring of Jaffa, dragging a chain of blue-white lightning behind it, then returned to his hand. Above, the Hartak ship's hull shimmered as a shield flared. "Ships got shields," Tony said, rising on repulsors, scanning. "Big ones, but they're not used to someone like me knocking." He soared up, repulsor beams cutting through clusters of Jaffa as he passed. His HUD painted the Hartak with lines and numbers. "Carter," he called, "I could use your brain on this." "I'm a little busy," she said, firing controlled bursts from her P-90 as she moved. But her voice stayed steady. "Their shields draw power from a central core. If you can spike the right frequency—" "Say no more," Tony replied. "Well, actually, say more. Text me the math." On the ground, Steve blocked a blast that would have taken out a fleeing villager. He turned, put his free hand on the man's shoulder. "Get inside," he said. "Stay down. We'll handle this." The man stared at him like he had never seen anyone like him before. He probably hadn't. Baal watched all of it. On his throne, safe behind layers of shielding in orbit, he smiled. The scene played in miniature on a floating screen. He could zoom in on the green monster, the hammer-throwing warrior, the flying metal man. "Beautiful," he said softly. The Tauri have pets now. My lord, a Jaffa said, they are tearing through our ground forces. That is what ground forces are for, Baal answered. To teach you about your enemy. He raised a hand and tapped a control. A new weapon signature lit up. Let us see, he said, how they handle something bigger. On the planet, a point of light formed under the Hartak. It gathered into a thick beam, thicker than the first. The air hissed around it. Carter's head snapped up. Incoming orbital strike, she shouted. Everyone move. The beam lanced down. It hit the ground not far from where the Hulk stood. The blast threw him back, rolling his huge body across the dirt. The shockwave tossed Steve off his feet, even behind his shield. The half-ruined metal pyramid cracked, pieces ripping away. For the first time, Steve saw the Hulk look genuinely stunned. Smoke rose from his skin. He pushed himself up with a growl, but slower. Okay, Tony said tightly in everyone's ears. That hurt. In the lab of his mind, he already knew basic things about that beam. Energy level, pattern, how often it could fire. Tony, Carter's voice came through, strained as she dove behind broken stone. Their weapons are tied into the ship's main power grid. If we cause an overload in the targeting system, it might disable the big guns. Right, Tony said. Overload the star cannon. Easy day. He rocketed higher, pushing his suit to the edge of the Hartak's shield. It crackled against him, throwing up readings that danced across his HUD. Jarvis, he said automatically, then corrected himself. Friday. Show me coupling points. They use a central crystal, right? Multiple nodes, the AI answered, but there is a repeat pattern at these points around the hull. Perfect, Tony said. Carter, we're going to do something very dumb and very smart. I'm going to hit their shield at exactly the wrong frequency for them. On the ground, Carter dug the device out of her pocket. It was small, with an antenna and a few buttons. She had used versions of it before to mess with Goa'uld tech. Sending you the modulated pulse now, she said, setting it to broadcast. Try syncing your repulsors to this pattern. If we're lucky, it will resonate with their power lattice. Define lucky, Tony muttered, but he was already matching frequencies. The next repulsor blast that left his hands wasn't just a beam of light. It carried a subtle shift in its wave. It hit the Hartak's shield. For a second, nothing happened. Then a ripple spread across the ship's surface. The glow around it flickered. One of the lower generator nodes sparked and went out. Ha, Tony said. Science wins again. Baal's smile faded as warning symbols flashed in front of him. What is this? He snapped. Report. Main cannons losing power, my lord, a Jaffa answered. Shields are unstable. The energy frequency. Baal clenched his jaw. Enough. Pull back. We have seen what we needed to see. He slammed his hand down on the control. The stars around the ship stretched into lines. On the ground, the Hartak's form shimmered. A moment later, it vanished into hyperspace, leaving only a fading glow and a sky full of dust. The Jaffa still on the planet saw their god ship disappear. Some fought harder, unwilling to surrender. Steve, Thor, Hulk, teal'c, SG-1, and the others moved as one. In minutes, the remaining Jaffa were disarmed or dead. The village stood shaken, but mostly intact. Steve lowered his shield and took a long breath. His ears rang. He looked at the people peeking out from doorways. Their eyes were wide. Some looked at Thor with awe. Some stared at Hulk with fear. Many looked at the broken Jaffa armor on the ground and seemed confused. teal'c walked among them, speaking in their language, telling them that the Goa'uld's power had limits, that new warriors now stood against them. One small boy walked up to Steve, touched the edge of his shield, then pulled his hand back like he had done something forbidden. "You are gods?" the boy asked in broken English. His eyes moved from Steve to Thor to Hulk. Steve crouched so they were on the same level. "No," he said. "We're just people with special tools and a lot of stubbornness." He smiled a little. "The people who told you they were gods," he added. "They're just bullies with better weapons, and we're here to stop them." The boy nodded slowly, not sure, but wanting to believe. Far above, beyond even where Baal's ship had jumped, Anubis watched the end of the battle. He had seen them take an orbital strike and get up. He had seen them tear through Jaffa. He had seen them touch the web of energy around Antarctic and make it sing the wrong tune. Not Goa'uld, not Asgard, not ancients, something new. "Interesting," Anubis said again. He considered the pieces on the board. He thought of the slow, grinding wars of the galaxy, of the cold rules of the Ascended. Then he smiled, a thin, terrible thing. Very interesting indeed. The briefing room felt smaller this time. Steve could feel it in the way everyone sat. Shoulders a little tighter, eyes a little sharper. The air carried the weight of what they had just done. The screen on the wall showed still images from P3X 457. Blown out craters, ruined metal pyramids, Jaffa armor scattered on the ground. In one frozen frame, Thor hovered above a group of villagers, lightning still faint in the clouds behind him. In another, Hulk shook dust off himself after the orbital strike. Hammond clicked a remote and turned off the screen. "The good news," he said, "is that the village is intact. Casualties are minimal. Our rebel contacts say Baal pulled back faster than usual." Jack leaned back in his chair. "Probably didn't like the new fireworks," he muttered. "Bad news?" Steve asked. Hammond slid a folder across the table. It was thicker than the last stack of forms. "The bad news," he said, "is that we have 3 different intelligence reports from off-world sources. They all say the same thing. Baal is telling the other system lords that Earth has new gods on its side." Thor made a face. "I do not like being used as propaganda," he said. "Welcome to the club," Fury said dryly. On the wall, a small screen showed a live news channel. The sound was off, but Steve could see the headline: "Mystery lights over Colorado sky." Someone had caught the pulse from the first unstable gate event on camera. The footage looped. A strange bright flare in the night. Hammond nodded at it. "That is the other part of the bad news," he said. "Even with our cover stories, people notice things. Lights in the sky, shocks underground, missing shipments. Every time we open that gate, we take a risk. With you here, that risk is bigger." Steve followed his gaze. The anchor smiled and talked about meteor showers while grainy video played. "We've dealt with public panic before," Steve said. "Sometimes telling the truth is better than letting rumors grow." "Not in this case," Hammond said, his voice firm. "If the general public learns there are dozens of alien races, parasitic gods, and near-invisible enemies who can attack from orbit, we risk global chaos. Governments could fall. People might surrender to the first false god who promises safety." Steve tightened his jaw. "So we just keep quiet, while whole planets live as slaves?" Daniel rubbed his eyes. "We've been asking that question for years, Steve." Natasha watched the room. She saw Steve's shoulders shift, saw the way Tony's fingers tapped faster when the word risk came up. She saw the IOA suits in the corner trade notes every time someone said public or power. One of them cleared his throat. He was in a dark, very neat suit. His hair was perfect. His smile was not. "Director Fury," he said. "General Hammond, the International Oversight Advisory has been reviewing the footage from the mission. We are impressed and concerned." "Impressed because Hulk punched through 3 Jaffa squads," Clint said. "Or concerned because he could do the same to your office?" The man's smile did not change. "We are concerned," he said, "because a very small group of people hold power that can reshape worlds. We've seen this story with the Goa'uld, with the Ancients, with the Ori." He looked at Tony. "Mr. Stark," he went on, "your armor, your weapons, combined with the Naquada-based technology we have here, we could build a defensive network around Earth that no enemy could ever breach. If the IOA had full access to your designs, we could control deployment and avoid overreach." Natasha's eyes narrowed. There it was, the pitch. Tony leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxation. Only Steve, who knew him by now, could see the tightness in his shoulders. "So," Tony said, "you want my homework, all of it. And in return, you promise not to mix it with whatever secret black projects you already have running." The IOA man spread his hands. "We promise oversight, shared goals, safety." "Safety for who?" Steve asked quietly. "For everyone," the man said. "That's not an answer," Steve said. Fury's voice cut in, smooth and dangerous. "We've played this game on our Earth," he said. "Big guns in small rooms. Oversight, that means we own you. It never ends well." Hammond watched them argue. He had seen generals, senators, and presidents use those same tones. He lifted a hand. "Enough," he said. "We can table the question of long-term tech sharing. Right now, we need to decide what to do next." Natasha's gaze flicked to the IOA man's briefcase. Small scanner, data stick. She filed it away for later. Hammond turned back to the screen. He clicked to another image. A simple map of their galaxy with colored dots. Some dots were red, some green, some made of small circles drawing lines, trade routes maybe. "Baal's move today was not random," he said. "He chose that world because he knew we would respond. He wanted to see you in action." "He did," Jack said. "He also got a face full of green rage, Thunder Boy, and flying tin can. I'm not sure he'll want seconds." "Men like Baal always want seconds," teal'c said. Fury laced his fingers. "You've raised your profile," he said. "There's no putting that back in the box. So the question is, do we hide you under this mountain, or do we use you to shift the game?" He looked straight at Steve. "And do you trust the people in this room enough," Fury added, "to play by their rules while we do it?" Steve felt every eye on him. He was used to that. It never got easier. He thought of the villagers on P3X 4537, of the boy who had touched his shield, of everyone under Goa'uld rule who would never even know their names. "I don't like secrets," he said. "We've seen what happens when a small group decides what the whole world can and can't handle." He nodded at Hammond and Daniel. "But I've also seen people panic," he added. "I've seen fear used as a weapon. If you say opening this to the public now would break more than it fixes, I hear you." He placed a hand on the shield beside him. "What I can't accept," he finished, "is us sitting here while people out there live under a boot. If we stay, we fight, we free worlds. We don't just protect this one mountain." Carter met his eyes. There was tired respect there. "Then we're on the same page," she said. "Because we've been doing that for years. Now we'll just be doing it with gods and monsters on our side." Across the room, the IOA man made another note. His pen moved smoothly. His eyes never warmed. Natasha watched him. She trusted words less than she trusted body language. The man's shoulders were too relaxed, his smile too fixed. Later, she promised herself, we'll see what you're really writing. Thor found teal'c in the gym. The Jaffa stood in front of a practice dummy, staff weapon held in both hands. He moved through a series of strikes and blocks, each one sharp. The dummy already had burns and dents. Thor waited until the set ended. Teal'c stopped, straightened, and inclined his head. Thor of Asgard, he said. Teal'c of teal'c, Thor answered. May I join you? Teal'c nodded. You may. Thor picked up a simple staff from the rack. It was lighter than Mjolnir, but still a decent weight. He twirled it in his hands, testing its balance. You have fought for many years, Thor said. I can see it in your stance. I have, Teal'c said. Much of it in the service of false gods. His jaw tightened on the last word. Thor struck at the dummy. The staff cracked against it, leaving a new mark. In my realm, Thor said, there are stories of worship. Men call the Asgard gods, yet we are not. We bleed, we tire, we make mistakes, we can die. He watched Teal'c's face. You followed beings who could die, Thor went on, but who claimed they could not. They stole the word God to hold power. It is offensive. Teal'c's lips curved in the smallest hint of a smile. I agree, he said. When I first met the Tauri, I believed them weak. Then I saw them fight, not with the power of gods, with the will of free men. He looked at Thor's hammer leaning on a nearby bench. You have the power of a god, Teal'c said, but you kneel to none. You fight beside them. I am a prince, Thor said, a warrior, a friend. Those are roles enough. He set the staff weapon aside and picked up Mjolnir. I swear this, he said quietly. As long as I stand beside you, Teal'c, no parasite will use thunder to rule your people again. Teal'c bowed his head. Then I am honored to fight with you, he said. The lab hummed. It was a different kind of hum than Tony was used to. Stark labs sounded like cooled metal and sleek processors. This one sounded like big, thick cables and reactors dug into rock. Carter stood at one end of the room scrolling through a tablet. Tony leaned over an open panel that fed into a schematic of the Stargate. Wires, alien crystals, and human-made circuits met there. Okay, Tony said. I will admit this much. Your people did a lot with very little. Carter arched an eyebrow. You mean with a few decades and some stolen tech instead of centuries and a billionaire budget? Hey, Tony said, pointing at her with a screwdriver. Envy doesn't look good on you, Major. Her mouth twitched. They had been at this for hours, mapping energy flows, comparing the wave pattern of the original accident to the Stargate's usual curve, looking for any hint of a stable way to open a control door back to Tony's universe. You know, Carter said, if we combine an ancient power matrix, Naquadah generators, and your arc reactor theory, we could create a planet-wide shield system. Already thought of that, Tony said. He closed the panel and straightened. I was thinking orbital platforms too, a web around the planet. Any Hartak that tries to come in gets turned into space dust. Carter's eyes lit up, then dimmed. And then every other major power on Earth wants one, she said. Russia, China, whoever else you have in your world, they all want their own Avengers-grade shield. If one side refuses, we have an arms race with multiple worlds watching. Tony looked at her. I'm not saying we do it, he said. I'm saying we could. That's the problem, Carter replied. We can do a lot of things. We can strip mine whole planets for Naquadah. We can build weapons that can crack a moon. Every time we learn a new trick, it changes the balance. She set the tablet down and rubbed her temples. Sometimes I wake up at night, she admitted, and wonder if we're just building bigger bombs for the next person who takes our chair. Tony was quiet for a moment. He knew that feeling. He had lived it after building Jericho missiles, after Ultron, after seeing his own tech used against him. I tried to put a suit of armor around my world once, he said. Didn't go well. Carter looked up. But I still like saving people, he went on. So here's what I'm thinking. We use all this, he waved at the alien tech, to find a way home for my team and to close the hole we made. We help you fight the people trying to burn your galaxy down, but we don't hand the keys to anyone who wants to build a Tyrant Shield 3000. She smiled at the name, just a little. Deal, she said, on one condition. Name it. You share your data, she said. Fully. We do this together. No hidden subroutines. No, oh, I forgot to mention the part where this machine can also blast asteroids. Tony held up a hand. Scout's honor, he said. You were never a scout, she replied. Avengers honor, he corrected. Slightly messier, same idea. That night Steve dreamed. He knew it was a dream because he stood in the middle of a battlefield that was also a quiet street in Brooklyn. Buildings flickered between old brick and alien metal. The sky shifted from blue to a strange glowing cloud. People lay on the ground, some in Jaffa armor, some in modern clothes, some in uniforms he didn't recognize. Their faces were still. A figure stood at the far end of the street. It wore a dark cloak, its features lost in shadow. You cannot save everyone, it said. The voice echoed oddly, as if it came from far away and from inside Steve's head at the same time. You have seen this. Steve tightened his grip on his shield. I've seen people die because men like you decided their lives were numbers on a page. I am not a man, the figure said. I am beyond such small limits. The buildings around them flickered again. Steve saw worlds he didn't know. A desert with great rings in the sand. A city under a force field being hammered by ships. A village burned by Jaffa. Look at them, the voice went on. Endless worlds, endless war. Goa'uld, replicators, Ori. Humanity pulls itself up only to be pushed down again. The ancients refuse to interfere. The Asgard fade. The figure lifted one hand. In it, Steve saw an image of himself leading an army. Avengers and SG teams behind him. Worlds freed. You could help me end this, the voice said. One ruler, one vision. I remove the worst. I burn the parasites. I freeze the machines. You and your allies need only aid me once, or look away. Steve felt a pull in his chest. The idea of ending all those wars in one move, of not having to watch another town burn, of not having to write another letter to a family. He set his jaw. Freedom isn't a gift from above, he said. It's something people fight for themselves. You don't get to take that from them and call it peace. The figure was silent for a beat. Then it laughed softly. Interesting, it murmured. The dream shattered. Steve woke up in his bunk, heart pounding. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He stared at the ceiling of the SGC dorm room. He knew in his bones that this dream was not just his brain. He'd been around enough strange things to feel when something had touched him from the outside. Across the mountain, Tony sat up in his own bed at the exact same moment, gasping. His dream had been different. He had seen worlds covered in a shield, his name on satellite networks in the sky. No aliens getting through, no Chitauri, no Goa'uld, no Replicator. But above it all, beyond it all, there had been that same shadow, the same sense of an unseen hand on the controls. He rubbed his eyes. Friday, he whispered. Tell me I've just been watching too many reruns of my trauma. There was a pause. Then the AI answered, soft. Unusual brainwave patterns detected, boss, she said. Similar to the energy signature we saw around the ancient structures in our scans. Tony swung his legs out of bed. Yeah, he said. That's what I was afraid of. By morning, the control room was busy again. Carter stood in front of a monitor, frowning. A new set of readings scrolled across it. The numbers were wrong in a familiar way. Ancient energy source, she said. Somewhere in the Antarctic outpost grid, spiking up and down. It started right around the time you two woke up. Steve crossed his arms. So it wasn't just a dream. Not in the usual sense, Daniel said. He looked tired too. We've had beings like this reach into people's minds before. Ascended, half ascended. They like to talk, or tempt. Someone's poking us, Tony said. Using your ancients' leftovers as an antenna. Hammond nodded once. Then our next move is clear, he said. We go to that outpost. We find out who is reaching in, and we figure out how to keep them out. He turned to Steve and Tony. You want to help? Hammond asked. Here's your chance. Steve met Tony's eyes. The same unease he felt sat there too. The same stubborn spark. Let's go meet your ghosts, Tony said. The wind at the edge of the world cut through Steve's jacket. He had faced worse. Ice in the North Atlantic, snow in war zones. But there was something about Antarctic cold that felt pure, like the world itself was scraping heat away. The ancient outpost sat half buried under ice and rock. From the air, it looked like a strange broken pattern. Up close, the lines became metal and stone blended in ways human hands couldn't copy. SG-1 moved ahead with practiced caution. Avengers followed. Tony had his full armor on, minus helmet. Frost formed on the gold and red plates. This place ever have central heating? He asked. Carter smiled faintly. It does, actually. If we can get the main systems online without waking anything up that wants to kill us. Always a fun if, Jack said. They entered through a tunnel cut by previous SGC teams. Lights blinked on as they passed sensors. The air inside was still and heavy, like a museum that hadn't had visitors in a long time. In the main chamber, rows of ancient consoles glowed softly. In the center sat a chair linked to cables and crystal pillars. Steve could feel the energy in the room, like the air before a storm. Welcome to the nearest thing the ancients left us to a user manual, Daniel said. Tony walked slowly around the consoles, eyes wide. This is, he said, searching for a word simple enough. Big. Carter moved to the main control panel. We've used this outpost before, she said, mostly as a way to power certain systems and defend Earth. But there are still parts of it we don't understand. She tapped a sequence. Holographic displays floated up. Symbols shifted. Data streamed. Someone or something has been poking at this from the outside, she went on, leaving a signature that matches what we saw in your dreams. I think they're trying to use the outpost as a bridge to wherever they are. Half-ascended creep with a thing for haunted house tricks, Tony said. Got it. He stepped up beside her. So, he said, if we tap into this thing, we might be able to trace them, or at least block them. And maybe, he added, watching the waves, learn something about how your gate grabbed our portal in the first place. Carter glanced at him. That's the plan, she said, but we have to be careful. The ancients built safety limits into this. If we push too hard, we could lose control. Tony's eyes sparkled. Careful is my middle name. Your file says otherwise, Daniel murmured. They got to work. Cables snaked out from Stark Tech and SGC gear, connecting to ancient ports. Tony's armor projected hollow screens that overlapped with the ancient ones, aligning patterns. Carter typed commands, adjusting energy flow. Naomi, one of the SGC techs, watched power levels, ready to cut lines if they spiked. Steve stood at the edge of the room, shield on his back, watching. This was not his field. His job here was simple. If something came through those walls, he would be between it and his team. Thor wandered the chamber slowly, fingers brushing ancient symbols. Hulk stayed farther back, uneasy in the tight metal space. As they worked, the hum in the room grew. The crystals brightened. The chair in the center lit up. "We're getting clearer readings," Carter said. "There's a resonance here that matches your universe, Tony. A kind of echo. If we lock onto it, we might be able to generate a controlled bridge, one that doesn't rip holes." Tony's heart thumped faster. Home, Pepper, his tower, his world. "Let's do it," he said. "Dial home." Carter hesitated. "Slowly," she said. "We still don't know what our mystery friend wants. We might open a door straight to him." Tony exhaled. "Right. Slow. For once." They tuned the systems, matching arcs and waveforms. A small, contained field shimmered to life over the main console. A miniature version of the gate's event horizon. For a moment, Tony saw something in it. A city skyline he knew. Stark Tower, no, Avengers Tower, standing tall. Then it wavered and vanished. "Signal is unstable," Carter said. "But it's there. We can find your home. We just need more time and a cleaner feed." Before Tony could answer, a new alarm started. Not a human alarm. A high-pitched, stuttering sound from the ancient systems themselves. "What is that?" Steve asked. Carter's eyes snapped to a different display. Her face drained. "Oh no," she whispered. "We woke something up." They came through the walls, not like ghosts, like knives. Little metallic blocks, about the size of a hand, slid out of hidden panels and joined together in midair. They moved with insect speed, snapping into legs, jaws, and blades. In seconds, the room's empty corners were full of scuttling mechanical spiders. "Replicators," Daniel said, voice tight. Steve didn't know the name, but he knew the feeling. This was a threat that did not care who they were. It cared about metal, energy, and growth. The nearest replicator launched itself at the main console. Its legs dug in. Sparks flew as it began to cut. "Not the power lines," Carter shouted. Steve moved before she finished. He yanked the thing off with one hand and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall, broke apart into blocks, and then reassembled itself, legs knitting back together. "Okay," Steve said. "That's new." Teal'c stepped forward. He fired his staff weapon at another replicator. The blast hit, blowing off pieces. They fell, and then skittered back, rejoining. "All teams, open fire," Jack yelled. P-90s chattered. Staff weapons boomed. Replicators shattered and reformed. They kept moving for the brightest, biggest sources of energy. The main console, the ancient chair, the Stark Tech. "This is bad," Tony said. "This is very bad. These things eat tech, right?" "They eat everything," Carter said. "They were designed to adapt. The Asgard had special weapons tuned to their frequency. We have portable versions now, but they're back at the base. I didn't bring one because we didn't think." A replicator landed on the side of Tony's suit and began to slice. Armor warnings flashed in his HUD. "Hey," Tony snapped. "No chewing on the merchandise." He grabbed it, tried to crush it. Its body bent and then flowed out of his hand like living metal. "Hulk," Steve shouted. "Smash the bugs." The Hulk roared and waded into the swarm. He stomped and punched, turning replicators into piles of shards. For a second, it worked. Then those shards flowed like water, rejoining. "Yeah, they're learning," Tony said grimly. "Of course they are." Carter ducked under a leaping replicator and slapped her hand on a smaller device on her belt. It chirped. "I'm sending a signal back to the base," she called. "We need the anti-replicator gun tuned to this frequency." "That'll take time," Jack said, "which we don't have." A cluster of replicators reached the main ancient core. Their blocks reformed into a drill shape and sank in. The lights around the room flickered. Tony's eyes flicked to the hollow showing the multiverse echo. It wavered. Lines he had just lined up started to twist. "They're going for the main processor," he said. "If they eat that, they'll have the map. To my universe. To this one. To whatever else the ancients looked at." Steve felt the choice forming even before Tony said the next words. "We need to get them off that core," Tony said. "Or fry it. We can't let them leave with that data." "But if we destroy it," Carter said, "we lose our clean path home. We'll have to start from scratch, maybe from nothing." Another replicator landed on the Stark console. Sparks flew. The small version of the portal flickered and vanished for good. Steve looked at Tony. The other man's eyes were on the core. He saw home in that light. Steve saw the same thing he always saw: responsibility. A replicator leaped at Carter's neck. Steve's shield cut it out of the air. It broke into blocks and skittered away. "We can't let these things spread," Steve said. "Not with that map. Imagine them in our world. Your world. Every world that ring can reach." Tony's jaw clenched. He remembered New York, Sokovia, Titan. He remembered trying to predict every threat and failing. "Yeah," he said softly. "I can imagine it." He took a step back from the console. "Okay," he said louder. "New plan. We overload the core. Turn this whole room into a replicator microwave. Carter, can we do that without blowing up half of Antarctica?" "Maybe," she said. "If we route power through the outer capacitors and use your arc reactor for a pulse." "My arc reactor is in my chest," Tony said. "Just to remind everyone." "You built one into your suit too," Carter replied. "The external unit. We can link it in and trigger a feedback loop. It'll burn out the core and send a charge through anything touching it." Tony thought for a half second, ran the math in his head, then nodded. "Do it," he said. Carter moved fast. She rerouted lines, fingers flying over ancient controls. Tony jacked a cable from his armor into a port. Energy readings climbed. "Everyone back," Steve shouted. "Get away from the core." Jack, Daniel, teal'c, and the others pulled back behind support pillars. Hulk grabbed a handful of replicators and hurled them toward the central pile, adding more metal to the frying pan. The room darkened as systems powered into the main core. "On my mark," Carter said. Sweat beaded on her forehead. 3, 2, 1. Now. She slammed her hand down on the control. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the core flared white. A wave of invisible force rolled out from it. Tony felt it through his armor. Steve's teeth vibrated. The replicators went silent. They froze mid-crawl. Their legs twitched once. Then the blocks went limp and fell, clattering to the floor. No reassembly, no movement. The lights went out completely. For a few seconds, the only sound was everyone's hard breathing. Then emergency systems flicked on, dim and red. Carter checked her scanner, heart hammering. "They're dead," she said. "Everyone in the room." The pulse overloaded their cores. Tony's HUD showed a lot of errors. "The ancient core?" he asked. Carter looked at another display. A line that had once been smooth now broke into jagged pieces. "Burned out," she said. "We lost the multiverse data it held." Tony closed his eyes for a second. He saw the tiny flicker of his tower vanish again. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, we'll build another way, later." Steve put a hand on his shoulder, solid, steady. "You did the right thing," Steve said. "Yeah," Tony said. "I know. Doesn't mean I have to like it." Carter kept scanning. "We'll need to sweep the rest of the outpost," she said. "Make sure there aren't more replicators in other chambers, and we have to assume some might have escaped before the pulse." "Great," Jack said. "Replicators with a taste for Stark tech. That's not going to haunt my dreams at all." They spent hours clearing the outpost. They moved room to room, destroying inert replicator bodies to be safe. Carter set up dampening fields to catch any that might still flicker. Hulk helped with the smashing, for once being allowed to break as many things as he liked. By the end, everyone was tired and bruised. Tony's suit had new scratches. Steve's shoulders ached from throwing the shield so many times. Even Thor looked a little drained. Back in the main chamber, Carter stood before the dead ancient core. "We can replace some of this," she said, "but not all. That data was built up over a long time. We lost our shortcut." Tony nodded. "Shortcuts are how we got into this mess," he said. "Maybe it's for the best." He meant it, mostly. On the flight back to the SGC, the mood was quiet. Steve watched the white continent fall away below. Beside him, Jack leaned his head back and closed his eyes. "You know," Jack said, "my life was already weird." Steve chuckled once. "Sorry," he said. "Not your fault," Jack replied. "Well, mostly your fault, but also the snakes, the robots, the space monks." He opened one eye. "You staying?" Jack asked. Steve looked ahead. "For now," he said. "We made this whole. We woke up new enemies. We owe you help." Jack nodded. "Good," he said, "because I have a feeling things are about to get weirder." The galaxy noticed. In a smoky tavern on a rebel-controlled world, Jaffa whispered about a green beast who tore through Jaffa lines like paper. On another planet, a trader told a story about a man who flew without a ship and shot light from his hands at a Hartak. Baal's spies brought him reports, his throne room filled with talk of Tauri gods and new weapons. He listened, amused. "These Avengers burned an ancient core today," he said, watching a tiny image of Tony's suit flash and the replicators fall. "They ruin their own advantages out of fear of what others will do with them." His eyes glittered. "That kind of conscience," he said, "can be used." He sent orders, new traps, new plans, seeded rumors. He wanted them worried, stretched thin. Far above him, beyond hyperspace, Anubis watched something else. He watched the burst of power from the ancient outpost. He tasted the pattern. Stark's arc reactor, Carter's modulated wave, ancient tech. He had hoped the replicators would steal that data and bring it to him, saving him the work. They had failed. But the attempt had taught him a great deal. "These mortals think in small lines," he mused. "One world, one war. They do not see the shape of the river beneath." He turned his focus back to Earth, to the SGC, to the Avengers moving in its halls. "They will learn," he said, "and then they will choose." Back under Cheyenne Mountain, mission reports waited. Steve sat at the same table as before. His pen scratched across the paper. He wrote about P3X 457, about Baal, about the villagers. He wrote about the ancient outpost. He did not write about the dream voice in the same detail. There were some things he would talk about face to face. Tony dropped into the chair beside him and let his head thunk onto the table. I built a multi-universe vector map, Tony said. I almost got us home. I fried it to stop robot bugs from snacking on reality. And now I have to fill out Form 18B about unforeseen enemy contact. Steve smiled. It could be worse, he said. They could make you use a typewriter. Don't joke, Tony said. I saw one in a storage room. Across the room, Natasha passed a thin file to Fury. An ID tried to scan Tony's armor while we were off-world, she said quietly. Left a tap on the data line. I cut it. Fury's jaw tightened. Of course they did, he said. IOA will want their own. Toys. NID will want them faster. He glanced over at Steve and Tony. We need to keep them focused, he said. On the real enemies, not on each other. Natasha followed his gaze. Steve bent over his report, hand steady. Tony's fingers tapped as he tried to decide how much snark fit into a classified document. They'll stay, she said, at least until this Anubis problem is less of a problem. And after that? Fury asked. Natasha shrugged. They're Avengers, she said. They'll go where they're needed, even if it's not their own world. That night Steve slept better. The shadow did not come back. The dream was simpler. He was back in Brooklyn, but this time the building stayed solid. He heard kids playing. Somewhere someone laughed. Across the base, Tony dreamed too. Not of towers falling, not of shields around the world, just of Pepper yelling at him for breaking another priceless artifact and then hugging him anyway. In the depths of space, on the edge of normal matter, Anubis waited. He could afford patience. He had watched galaxies turn before. A few weeks, months, even years meant nothing. When he moved again, it would not be with simple beams or Jaffa. It would be with offers, with truths twisted into weapons. For now, he watched the strange new pieces on the board. Earth with two different pasts. A gate that touched more than space. And a team of mortals who called themselves Avengers, standing in the middle of all of it, trying very hard not to become gods. Weeks passed, and the mountain changed. Steve felt it every morning. He woke to the hum of the base, pulled on his uniform, and headed to the gym. At first, soldiers had stared when he walked in. Now they just made room. Again, Steve said. Two young SG soldiers stood across from him, shields on their arms, training models, lighter than his. Sweat ran down their faces. Their breathing was rough. Steve stepped in, tapped one shield with his own, then twisted. The soldier's stance slipped. You're thinking about the shield, Steve said. Don't think about the metal. Think about the people behind you. He nodded at the painted line on the floor behind them. It marked civilians in this drill. You're not just blocking hits, Steve went on. You're choosing what gets past you. That's the job. The second soldier reset his grip. Yes, sir, Steve smiled. Good. Now try to push me off that line. They came at him together. He moved clean and solid, not trying to show off, just to show what was possible. Their shields banged together. Boots slid. Steve didn't budge. He remembered kids in Brooklyn playing stickball. He remembered teaching Avengers how to work as a unit. Now he was teaching SG teams who would walk through a ring to other worlds. Different war. Same idea. Across the base, another routine played out. Tony sat in the lab with Carter, surrounded by screens and half-built devices. Naquada generators hummed. Stark tech glowed. Ancient crystals sat in a careful grid, like a puzzle that refused to be solved on the first try. Okay, Tony said, tapping a diagram. If we push power through these 3 nodes, we can stabilize a microbridge. Not big enough for a person, but enough to send a probe. Maybe a message. Carter nodded. We stay under the energy threshold that woke up the replicators, she said. We keep the ancient safeties happy, slow and steady. 2 words I never thought I'd say with pleasure, Tony said. Slow and steady. He looked at the tiny hologram of a universe map spinning over the table. It was a new one, built from scraps. It didn't have the sharp, clean lines of the core they had fried, but it was theirs. We get a clean read, he said. We send a ping to my Earth. Let them know we're alive. Best case, we build a round trip in a few months. Worst case, we spend a lot of late nights staring at error messages. Carter smiled. You say that like you don't enjoy it. Oh, I enjoy parts of it, Tony said. I just also enjoy not being haunted by half-ascended space wizards. In the hangar bay, Hulk lifted a broken piece of alien armor the size of a truck and set it gently onto a platform. Engineers in orange vests swarmed over it, attaching clamps. Easy, big guy, one of them said. Set it down. Perfect. Thanks. Hulk grunted. He wasn't sure he liked all the small people running under his feet, but he did like this work. It was simple. Lift, move, don't break the humans. He glanced at a large crate nearby marked in thick marker. Do not throw, even if it looks heavy. Hulk snorted. He was learning jokes. Off-world, Thor and teal'c became a rumor. They hit a minor Goa'uld depot on one mission. Thor dropped out of the sky like a hammer himself, lightning blasting a ring of guards. teal'c moved through the smoke with his staff weapon. Together, they broke the gate controls and left a Jaffa message for any who came later. No more gods, it said. Only free men. Jaffa rebels carried that story to other camps. They told it beside fires and in hidden barracks. Each time they did, the story grew. The hammer god became bigger, the green monster stronger. The man with the shield could catch the sky itself. The galaxy listened and worried. So did Earth. In an IOA meeting room somewhere far above ground, men and women in neat suits watched clips from SGC cameras. Thor on a mission, Hulk lifting a crashed ship, Iron Man flying alongside a missile that wasn't theirs. These beings are not assets, one man said. They are wildcards. We should be working harder to secure their loyalty, a woman replied. Or at least, their technology. The NID has already tried, another said. They were caught. We cannot risk open conflict with the SGC and SHIELD while we face these alien threats. A long pause. We may not have to risk conflict, the first man said. We just have to be ready if they decide they prefer another side. No one said whose side they meant. One morning, the SGC war room felt wrong. Steve knew it as soon as he stepped in. The usual low buzz of voices was softer. The air felt thick. The hair on his arms rose, the way it had in the ancient outpost. Around the table stood Hammond, Jack, Carter, Daniel, teal'c, Fury, Natasha, Tony, Bruce, Thor, Clint. Everyone had been called in. No one knew why. The big screen on the wall showed a map of the galaxy. Coloured dots pulsed. New intelligence from our Jaffa allies, Hammond said. Anubis has been moving forces in ways that don't make sense, pulling back from some worlds, concentrating on others with no clear value. Daniel pointed to the map. He's not just fighting other Goa'uld, he said. He's pulling ships away from major targets to sit here and here. Tony studied the dots. Those are ancient ruins, right? He said. Like the outpost, old structures with big power sources. Carter nodded. We think he's trying to tap more of the ancient systems, she said. Maybe to boost his already unfair abilities. Thor frowned. He is half a ghost already, he said, if he takes more of their power. We don't let him, Steve said. We hit those sites before he gets there. Hammond opened his mouth to answer. The lights flickered. Every screen in the room went black. For a heartbeat, there was only darkness, the faint red glow of emergency lights, and the quiet sound of everyone reaching for weapons out of habit. Then the main screen lit up again on its own, not with a map, with a face, or rather, the lack of one. A hooded shape filled the screen. Its features were the same shadow Steve had seen in his dream. Not fully there, not fully not there. The cloak seemed to swallow light. When it spoke, the sound did not just come from the speakers. It slid into their heads. "Hello," Anubis said. Every person in the room went still. Hammond's hand hovered near the comm panel, then stopped. He knew somehow that this was not a signal he could cut with a switch. "You trespass in a secure facility," Fury said. Because if there was one thing he could do in any universe, it was stare down a threat. "That tends to annoy me." Anubis ignored him for a moment. His hidden gaze drifted across the room as if feeling each mind. It paused on Carter, on Daniel, on teal'c. Then it settled on Steve and Tony. "We have spoken," he said, "in dreams. Now we speak in the waking world." Bruce felt his skin prickle. The other guy roared quietly in the back of his mind. Hammond stepped forward. "You are not welcome here," he said. "We will not be intimidated in our own house." Anubis's cloak shifted, as if in a shrug. "You have already been changed," he said. "By me. By them." He nodded at the Avengers. "You break machines rather than let them spread," he went on. "You pull weak worlds out of fire. You feel the weight of every death. You understand, as I do, that this galaxy cannot survive endless war." Steve's hands curled into fists at his sides. The voice was the same as the dream, calm, icy, certain. "You rule with fear," Steve said. "You burn planets. You send armies of slaves. That is not understanding. That is control." The shadow's edges darkened. "I do what I must," Anubis said, "because the others will not. The Ascended sit and watch. The Asgard fail. The Tauri stumble. I am willing to carry the cost." He lifted a hand. The screen shifted. Images flashed. A planet under siege. A Hartak fleet fighting another Gold. People dying with no idea why. Another world, half-eaten by replicators. Machines crawling over broken cities. A third world, kneeling at the feet of priors, staffs glowing. Flames rose behind them. "Gold, replicators, Ori," Anubis said. "Threats you barely know. Threats that will not end with a few noble missions." Tony felt his stomach twist. He knew the math of large numbers. If you saved one world but 10 burned, was that enough? It was a question that had chewed at him for years. Anubis's voice softened. "You could help me," he said. "You, Stark, could build shields on a scale no one has seen. You, Thor, could strike down my rivals. You, Rogers, could lead armies to break the chains of 1,000 worlds in one campaign." The screen shifted again. Now it showed a different future. Hartak fleets broken. Replicator swarms burned. Priors lying dead in the dust. Worlds at peace, their skies clear. "And in return," Anubis said, "you ask nothing. You retire. You go home. You live in a universe where the threats are local." His tone cooled. "Or you stand in my way," he said, "and you watch worlds die that could have been saved." Silence filled the room. Steve heard his heart beat. He thought of P3X 457, the boy who had touched his shield. He thought of all the worlds on the map that were just dots. Tony thought of New York, of Sokovia, of the snapping sound of fingers in a ruined future. He also thought of Hydra, of shield files, of seeing his own name on weapons in the wrong hands. Why should we trust you? Tony asked quietly. You say you'll burn the bad guys and stop, but people like you never stop. Because I'm tired, Anubis said. Because I wish to move on. Because I cannot leave until the board is cleared. I offer a bargain that benefits us both. He paused. Do you think you can solve this alone? He asked. With raids and brave speeches? You will die long before this war ends. Steve stepped forward. We don't solve it alone, he said. That's the difference between you and us. You stand above, we stand beside. He met the darkness on the screen as if it were eyes. We've seen this plan before, Steve said. Back home, men who said, let us rule and we'll keep you safe. It always ends the same way, with people in chains, too scared to look up. You call yourself a guardian, Thor added, stepping up beside Steve. Thunder seemed to rumble faintly somewhere far away. But you are only another tyrant. You dress your hunger for control in the language of duty. Tony blew out a breath. Here's the thing, he said. Your pitch has elements. Less chaos, fewer surprise invasions, less space roach infestation. 10 years ago, I might have listened longer. His eyes hardened. But I've seen what happens when one person decides they know what's best for everyone, he went on. I built that nightmare once. I'm not signing up for yours. Bruce lifted his gaze. You think you're the only one who carries weight, he said. You're not. We live with what we've done every day. That doesn't mean we hand the universe to a ghost to make the math easier. Clint shrugged. Also, he said, you're really creepy. Natasha's lips twitched. Anubis was silent. In that silence, Steve felt the choice settle. Not in one big speech, but in 100 small moments that had come before. Every time they had picked the hard path over the easy one. Every time they had stepped between power and the helpless. We fight you, Steve said. If you go after these worlds, you'll find us there. You can count on that. Anubis did not rage. He did not shout. He laughed. It was a low sound, without warmth. Very well, he said. Then you will see what your choice costs. The screen went black. The lights in the room snapped back to normal. Every system beeped as if nothing had happened. No one moved for a moment. Then alarms began to scream. They sprinted to the control room. Walter's hands flew over the keyboard. Carter slid into the seat beside him. What have we got? Hammond asked. Multiple off-world distress calls, Walter said. 3 rebel worlds reporting attack. Anubis's ships and... He stopped, swallowed. We just picked up a power spike on the far side of the system. It's big. On screen, Hammond ordered. The main monitor switched to a space view. A dark shape hung at the edge of Earth's system. It was not a normal Hartak. It was larger, wrapped in a shroud of energy that looked like a thundercloud in space. Light bent around it. That is not good, Tony said. Carter's face went pale. That pattern, she whispered. It's like the ancient superweapons, but twisted. He's built something from their designs. Daniel glanced at her. Can it hit us from there? If it fires, she said, it could punch through our normal shields, maybe even crack the planet's crust in places. Plan, Jack asked. Hammond looked at the Avengers. In orbit, that's your field, he said. Tony was already moving. Suit, up, he said into the team channel. Thor, we're taking the high road. Hulk, you're on deck in case something reaches atmosphere. Cap, coordinate defense with SG teams and air forces. Carter, I need every trick you know about ancient weapons in my ear. Got it, Steve said. Hulk cracked his knuckles and grinned. Minutes later, Iron Man blasted out of a sub-level hangar, followed by 2 F-302 fighters and a small ship SGC, had barely finished testing. Its Naquadar engines flared as it chased him toward the stratosphere. Thor rose beside Tony, carried by his hammer, cape whipping behind him. "You face gods and ghosts," Thor shouted over the wind. "Yet you still charge into the sky with a metal shell. I respect that." "Just keep the big lightning for the bad guy," Tony said. "I like my shell unfried." As they broke into space, the dark shape loomed larger. Tony's HUD painted it with lines. It was like a Hartak had swallowed an ancient device and grown sick. Energy surged around it in uneven waves. Parts of it weren't fully solid, phasing in and out. "Anubis is part energy," Carter's voice came through. "He might be merged with the weapon. You can't just blow it up. You have to disrupt the field that holds him together, or he'll survive in some form." "Of course," Tony muttered. "Couldn't be simple." Anubis's voice brushed his mind again. "You hurry to protect your home," he said. "You leave other worlds to burn. You prove my point." Tony gritted his teeth. "Funny thing," he said out loud, "about multitasking." Below, on the ground, SG teams and air forces launched. Gates dialed. Rebel allies called for help and got answers. SG-1 was coming. Other SG units too. Cap stood in the gate room, giving last-minute orders. "Protect civilians first," Steve told one team. "Take down command structure, not just foot soldiers. Hit their symbols. Break their hope." He slapped the chevron rail as the wormhole engaged. "Let's move," he said, running up the ramp with Jack, Daniel, teal'c, and a squad behind him. They couldn't be in space and on those worlds at the same time, but they could divide. That was the point of a team. In orbit, the first blast came. A beam of twisted energy lashed out from Anubis's construct. It hit an unmanned satellite and turned it into dust. "Good news," Tony said. "He's testing range." "Bad news. Range is great." Thor hurled Mjolnir. The hammer crashed into the edge of the dark field around the construct. Lightning erupted, crawling over the surface. For a second, the shroud thinned. Tony saw glimpses of internal structures, glowing veins of power, a half-formed face. Then the field thickened again. The hammer flew back to Thor's hand. "He hides like a coward," Thor growled. "He hides in physics," Tony said, "which is almost worse. Carter, I need a weak spot, someplace those power lines bunch up." On the ground, in the control room, Carter traced the readings as fast as they came. The weapon's energy profile danced. "There," she said, marking 3 nodes on the model. "If you hit those at the same time with high-energy strikes, it should destabilize the outer field." "F-302 pilots," Hammond said into the comm. "You heard the lady. Coordinate with Iron Man and Thor. On my mark." In space, the fighters swooped into position. Tony took one node. Thor took another. The third went to the small ship, its pilot nervous but steady. 3, Hammond's voice said. 2, 1, mark. Tony fired both main repulsors, tuned to the frequencies Carter had sent. Thor hurled Mjolnir, calling a focus bolt. The small ship fired Naquadar-enhanced missiles. 3 impacts hit 3 points. The dark field flared, then rippled. "Now!" Carter shouted. "Push more in." Tony overcharged his repulsors. Red lines crossed his HUD. He ignored them. Thor poured more power into his lightning until the armor around his arms glowed. The field buckled. For a moment, they saw inside. They saw a twisted core of ancient tech wrapped in gold metal. Smaller weapon pods. A central crystal pulsing like a heart. Around it, a shape of energy, vaguely human, but stretched and wrong. Anubis, wed to his weapon. He saw them too. "You cannot kill me," he said. His voice shook space. "I am beyond you." "Good thing we're not trying to kill you today," Tony said. "Just ruin your day." He dumped a final overcharge blast into the central crystal. On the ground, Carter's screen flared white. Then it went dark. In space, the construct shuddered. The dark field collapsed in on itself, like a bubble popping. The outer layers of the structure began to tear away. Metal plates twisted. Energy bled off in arcs. "Pull back," Tony yelled to the fighters. They veered away. Thor flew higher. The remains of Anubis's weapon did not explode like a normal ship. It came apart into glowing fragments that drifted, then faded. The energy that had held it together broke into smaller streams and vanished into the void. For a second, Tony felt a claw at the edge of his mind. "This is not the end," Anubis hissed. "You have only delayed the inevitable." "Yeah," Tony said, breathing hard. "That's kind of our thing." The presence withdrew. Space went quiet. Tony's suit screamed at him. Power levels low. System stressed. "Thor," he said, "if you don't mind, I could use a tow." Thor grinned and grabbed his arm. "Hold tight, man of iron," he said. "We return to your mountain." On 3 different worlds, SG-1 and other teams fought their own battles. On one, Steve led a charge through Jaffa lines to blow up a command post, freeing a group of prisoners before a Hartak could fire on them. On another, teal'c rallied rebel Jaffa, while Jack used explosives on a key gate platform, cutting off Anubis's reinforcements. On a third, Daniel and Natasha helped villagers slip past fighting to reach the gate, while Clint picked off enemy officers from a rooftop. Anubis had thrown his weight around to make a point. The SGC and Avengers had limited the damage. They had not saved everyone. They had saved many. Later, in the war room, they gathered again. Casualty reports lay on the table. So did lists of worlds that had held. It was a mixed picture. It always was. Hammond looked at the screen showing Earth system. The dark construct was gone. Normal satellite lines flickered back into place. "We stopped him from firing on Earth today," he said. "We blunted his attacks on our allies. But Anubis is still out there. He still has other weapons, other plans." Fury nodded. "He pushed," he said. "We push back. We can do it again." "The more we fight him," Daniel said, "the more attention we get from other powers. The Ascended, the Ori, even some Asgard remnants. We're changing the board." Steve accepted that. He had never thought one battle would end a war. "What matters," he said, "is that we chose not to work for him. We chose not to be his sword." He looked at the others. "And we'll keep choosing," he said, "every time he tries this again." Tony leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, but his eyes were steady. "If we keep getting in his way," he said, "he might stop seeing us as toys and start seeing us as a real threat." "Good," Thor said. "I prefer an enemy who takes us seriously." Hulk grunted agreement. Carter tapped the table. "In the meantime," she said, "we go back to work. We keep building a way to your home. We reinforce our defenses. We help our allies, one choice at a time." Steve felt a strange calm settle. He was in a different universe, fighting different enemies, but the core was the same. Stand up, hold the line, help people stand for themselves. "Then that's our new normal," he said. "We're not your gods. We're not your rulers. We're your very noisy neighbors with a low tolerance for tyrants." Hammond almost smiled. "That works for me," he said. He slid a small stack of paper toward Tony. "And now," he added, "about those mission reports." Tony groaned. "You just killed the mood," he said. "You know that, right?" Steve chuckled and picked up his pen. Some things never changed. Snow dusted the top of Cheyenne Mountain. The sky above was clear, sharp blue. The air was cold enough to sting the nose, but Steve liked it. It felt clean. He stood near the edge of the fenced-off area, looking out over the trees and the small shapes of roads and houses far below. A world that had no idea how close it had come to disaster again. Jack joined him, hands in his pockets. "You know," Jack said, "most guests don't come topside unless they're leaving." Steve smiled. Just needed some air. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "When I first walked into this mountain," Steve said, "I thought it was just another bunker, another secret, another group of people hiding truth from the world." Jack nodded. "Sometimes it feels like that from inside too." Steve shook his head. "I see it different now," he said. "I see people doing the best they can with what they have, trying to hold a lot of broken pieces together. I respect that." He thought of Anubis, of the offer, of the weight in that voice. "He thinks we're naive," Steve said, "that if we don't take control, everything will fall apart." Jack washed his face. "Maybe we are naive," Jack said, "but I'd rather be naive and keep my soul than be right and lose it." Steve laughed softly. "You sound like Daniel," he said. "Don't tell him," Jack replied. Down in the base, Tony sat at a table with Carter and Daniel. The new multiverse device hummed between them, small and neat compared to the outpost core. A faint, shimmering field hovered over it. "Signal stable," Carter said. "We're locked onto your universe's signature, at least one of them. There may be more branches, but this is the closest match." Tony swallowed. He saw in his mind Pepper, Happy, Rhodey, the tower, the smell of New York air. "We can open a small window," Carter went on. "Send a message, maybe a probe. A full physical transit will take more testing, more power. But this," she nodded at the device, "this works." Daniel rested his hands on the table. "You can go home," he said. "Soon, if you want." Tony looked at the shimmer. "It's funny," he said. "We spent all this time trying not to stay. Now that we might be able to leave, it feels different." Carter understood. She had left Earth many times, always coming back, but she knew the pull of the stars. "You don't have to decide now," she said. "Anubis isn't done. The replicators aren't gone. The Ori are still out there. We could use you." Tony smirked. "You just want my arc reactors," he said. Carter smiled back. "Well," she said, "those two." He looked at her, then at Daniel, then at the faint portal. "We'll send a message," Tony said. "Let them know we're alive, that we're helping some new friends. Then we keep doing that for a while." He tapped the device. "If there's one thing I've learned," he added, "it's that you don't walk away in the middle of a fight. Not when the other guy is a space ghost with ancient toys." In another part of the base, Hulk sat in a huge chair built just for him, watching a small TV. A cartoon played. On the screen, a green monster gently helped people rebuild a town. Hulk tilted his head. Then he smiled, slow and careful. "I like this show," he rumbled. The tech who had turned the TV on nodded, trying not to look nervous. "Me too, buddy," he said. "Me too." In a distant Jaffa camp, children played in the dirt. One held a round piece of metal painted red and white. He pretended it was a shield, blocking imaginary staff blasts. Another held a stick like a hammer and shouted in a deep voice. A third stomped around, growling, pretending to be Hulk. Their parents watched, half worried, half hopeful. "New stories," one mother said quietly. "Not just the old gods." On a world where a Hartuk lay in ruins, a former Jaffa priest knelt before a broken statue of a gold. He took off the gold emblem on his forehead. He set it down in the dirt. "No more," he whispered. "No more false gods." He looked up at the sky. "If you are real," he said to whatever might be listening, "help us stand on our own feet, or send us friends who will." He did not know that on another world, a ring would soon open and a team would step through, some in green uniforms, some in strange armor, one with a shield. Stories moved faster than ships now. Back on the mountain, the gate room buzzed. Technicians checked the ring. SF team stood ready. SG-1 geared up. The Avengers did too. "Mission today?" Steve asked Hammond. "Ally world on the edge of Baal's territory," Hammond said. "They asked for help setting up new defenses. Word of your last few missions got around." He looked at Steve. "They requested you by name," he added. "And the Hammer God, and the Red Metal One, and the Green Fury." Steve smiled. "We'll try not to disappoint," he said. Hammond nodded. "Come back in one piece," he said. "We still need those reports." Tony groaned. "I knew there was a catch." The gate began to spin. Symbols locked, power built. The event horizon exploded outward, then settled into a rippling pool. Steve looked around at his team. Tony, helmet under his arm. Thor, hammer ready. Bruce, calm for now. Natasha and Clint, relaxed but alert. Fury up in the control room, watching. SG-1 at his side, Jack, Carter, Daniel, teal'c. Friends now, not just allies. "Ready?" Steve asked. Clint knocked a practice arrow and pointed it at the blue surface. "Ladies, gentlemen, and gods," he said, "let's go annoy a few tyrants." Thor laughed. "A fine goal." Steve took a breath, then stepped forward. He thought of Brooklyn, of New York, of the universe he had left, of the one he stood in now. Different stars, same fight. "We're not from here," he said softly, mostly to himself. "But we're here now, and that's what matters." He walked up the ramp. The wormhole washed over him, cold and bright. From the control room, Daniel watched them go. Jack stood beside him, hands in his pockets. Hammond stood behind them. "Think they'll stay?" Jack asked. Daniel thought about it. "For a while," he said. "Long enough to change things. Long enough to make this galaxy a little louder. And probably a lot messier." Jack smiled. "Wouldn't have it any other way," he said. On the other side of the gate, somewhere far away, the Avengers and SG-1 would step out together onto alien soil. People would look up and see them. Word would spread. New gods had arrived, some would say. No, others would answer, not gods. Just people who refused to bow. Back under the mountain, in a quiet office, a stack of blank mission report forms waited on a desk. A small note sat on top, in Steve's neat handwriting. "We went through," it said. "We'll tell you the rest when we get back." The universe kept turning. It wasn't fixed. It wasn't safe. But it was different now.